South Africa's May 29th elections.
There was a start of change in the country.
We are on the verge of history.
I am standing here at the forefront of change, where voices echo the call for action. The nation grapples with an unemployment crisis. As South Africans prepare to cast their votes, the question looms: will the winds of change usher in a new era, or will the legacy of the past maintain its grip on the future? Hello and welcome. Our top focus remains the pivotal election in South Africa. Citizens in the country are just hours away from voting in a historic general election. The 2024 battle is expected to be the tightest since the end of apartheid in 1994. All eyes are on President Cyril Ramaphosa and the ruling African National Congress, who have been under immense pressure. And that is because in the last 5 years, South Africa has witnessed a widening gap between what the ANC promised and what it delivered. Critics say the ANC has failed to walk the talk on several crucial issues, from unemployment to crime rates to cost of living crisis and even power cuts. 27.79 million strong electorate is eligible to vote in the 29th of May election, the highest since the dawn of democracy in the Rainbow Nation. Of this, about 11.7 million, or 42% of voters, aged between 18 and 39 years old, which means that South Africa's political future could be decided by its youth. For them, the primary concern has been high unemployment rate, which had adversely impacted them the most.
I'm now for 4 years unemployed, and one son is at school, and my daughter, she's as well unemployed. So it's hard for us to come by just to get that sort of money. I would like to have a job, any job, even if it's to clean someone's house. Any job, I'll take it.
This year, the ANC has promised to create millions of jobs in the next 5 years, along with wiping out corruption, boosting investments and the private sector.
Next 5 years, working with all South Africans, we will implement a jobs plan to put more South Africans to work. We will build our industries and invest in an inclusive economy. We will tackle the high cost of living. We will invest in our people and provide services that our people need.
According to the World Bank, South Africa has the highest unemployment rate globally. During the first quarter of this year, more than 8.2 million South Africans remained without jobs. The unemployment rate surged by a whopping 32.9% from the previous quarter. Comparatively, back in 2019, this unemployment rate stood at 28.7%. Now, last year, close to half the citizens aged 15 to 34 were neither studying nor were they working or training for work. And the United Nations says this could be a quote-unquote ticking time bomb, which could further lead to political instability. Now, as the voting date draws closer, Ramaphosa's success hinges heavily on whether or not voters are convinced that the ANC's policies will reverse the worrying trend. For more on this, we are being joined by Musa Mdunge, a political analyst who is joining us live from Dundee in the UK. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and good afternoon to you and to your viewers.
Right. Now, with such large percentage of the voters between the ages of 18 and 34, South Africa's political future could very well be decided by its youth. Just how important is it for the youth of a nation to be involved in the democratic process of voting?
Well, Alison, it's a very, very important duty, civic duty that young people ought to undertake in these particular elections. As you put it so well, that, you have about 11 million voters, aged between that 18 to 39. So certainly young people will have a role to play in these elections. The question that we've got to ask ourselves is, will we see particularly those from 18 to 25 really join these elections? And if that is the case, where will their vote turn? And what will it tell us about how young people are thinking about not only the political system, but also the kind of political ideology they believe is befitting for a country like South Africa to pursue as it grows? So the role of young people is quite important in these elections, but we know that young people tend not to go out in bulk to vote. And that's been really the challenge for political parties, to really get that youth vote out in support for them.
Absolutely. And with unemployment at an impossibly high rate of 32.9%, with many of those being young people in the country, what do you think could be the impact of their votes on the election tomorrow?
Well, if we look at polling, polling just suggests that we are looking at a very consequential election where the African National Congress is unlikely to get a 50+1. And this has many implications in terms of the kind of partners they can then bed in order to enter power. Now, the challenge, as you've put it nicely, is that this issue around unemployment is such a big issue for young people, because about 50% of these young people sit outside of education and outside of formal employment. The problem here, Alison, is this, is how do you then develop this economy? Because the challenge South Africa's economy has is you are dealing with an economy that is saturated, an overly developed economy whose current industries have no new space for growth, and the kind of growth that would really see job creation happening at a faster pace. So you would know this term, this idea of jobless growth that has often been lauded upon us as South Africans. And I would argue that it's not a matter of jobless growth. It is that the pace of the economy to grow in such a way that even those who sit outside of the labor market, in other words, those who have decided to give up on looking for a job, are then able, not one, to inspire to re-enter the labor market, but also the labor market's ability to even absorb them. And I would argue that what we have is a twin problem for the South African labor market. It's one about those who are active in the labor market but can't find jobs. That's what the 32.4% represents. But it's this other boogeyman, which are those who have been discouraged. But what will happen if growth starts to trickle in and jobs are created at a higher rate? What you're likely to see is more people re-entering the labor market. And I would argue for the medium term, you won't see those unemployment numbers drop. And that's how we tell the story. We need to tell the story in its totality. But I don't see political parties doing that. And that's where the problem and the crisis is.
Yeah. And Musa, the ANC had promised jobs in its 2019 manifesto. Now in 2024 as well, it has promised millions of jobs. Has the current ANC leadership jeopardized the party's political legacy by not fulfilling its promises? And do you think that the youth of South Africa will put their trust in the ANC again?
ANC's results, certainly from the last 5 years, of course, we know we had COVID-19, and that didn't help our economic plight. I think the ANC has not done itself well by not meeting its promises, or at the least being honest with the South African population about what it truly will take in order to deal with this unemployment crisis. The challenge for the ANC has been around the structural impediments that have shaped the South African economy, as I have laid out. And it is around the policies on industrialization, on trade, on how do you support small businesses. All of these things are areas in which I think the ANC has not been able to truly do well, and has impacted Cyril Ramaphosa's ability to almost turn this new dawn into a reality, as he had spoken about. And a second thing I would argue is it's important that we get our cause and effect analogy right here. Does the state truly create jobs? And if we truly believe that, then what are the kind of economic policies that need to take shape? And I think that there's a dishonesty here by the ANC, but even other political parties are doing it as well, to say that it is the state who will hold the full responsibility of creating jobs. And you and I both know that is not the case. It's the private sector whose duty is to do that. But what kind of economic conditions is the state setting up for the private sector to take that initiative? And I think the fact that the ANC have been both dishonest about this cause and effect as it relates to jobs, that has not done them right. But I see the same thing happening with other political parties, which then tells me that even after the 29 May election, we may just have more of the same as it comes from what shapes the political and economic understanding and ideology that political parties understand in terms of job creation. And that's the key here, is who creates jobs? Is it the state or the private sector?
Yeah.
Depending how we answer that question, then we can hold these public office bearers accountable to say, have you both understood the South African story in terms of its economy? But two, do you have then the solutions for it?
Absolutely. Musa, thank you very much for your time on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
South Africa's May 29th elections.
It was the start of change in the country.
We are on the verge of history.
I am standing here at the forefront of change, where voices echo the call for action. The nation grapples with an unemployment crisis. As South Africans prepare to cast their votes, the question looms: will the winds of change usher in a new era, or will the legacy of the past maintain its grip on the future?